Hello once again. My name is Jim and our company is Vantage Property Management. I'm going to spend some time today on a very serious subject. We're only going to be able to kind of touch the tip of the iceberg on it, and that's advice on landlords' holding of tenant security deposits. Well, what is a security deposit? Most owners think, well, that's something that you collect, so at the end of the lease, if the tenant has not lived up to their part, that'll be some money that you can prevail upon. And the answer, that's partly true. But when should a security deposit be taken? Actually, right at the time you sign the lease. Typically you would sign a lease, let's say on the first of the month, where the tenant would maybe be moving in the first of the following month. Well, come move-in time, they don't show up. What do you do? Well, one thing, you've got their security deposit. So part of it is there to make sure they do show up at the beginning of the lease. How much security deposit can you collect? Here in Maryland, 1 month is the customary amount, 2 months is the maximum. So you cannot, in any shape or form, collect more than 2 months security deposit. You can't trickily call it last month rent or anything like that. The courts just won't stand for it. Maryland's rules, they're fair, but they're in-depth on what has to be explained to the tenant right up front. Now, this has nothing to do with whether you're using a management company or doing it on your own, but there's several paragraphs of information explaining just what security deposits are and how they work, which must be explained right up front to the tenant. Here at Vantage, we just build that information right into the lease, of course, so by reading the lease, they read that information. But it must be included. You can't get away with a drugstore version or a standard internet form. Maryland's just got some strict rules on that. Keep the security deposit in a separate bank account, in an escrow account. Remember, it is not your money. It is the tenant's money that's being held in trust by you, the landlord, or we, the management company, which will be satisfied at the end of the lease, either given back to the tenant or security deposit issues where we may deduct some. Maryland's got a really bad law about interest on tenant security deposits. And here again, this doesn't matter whether you're doing this privately or through a management company. The state says that landlords must pay tenants annual interest of 1.5% on their security deposits. Now, as you know, in this day and age, you would never be able to get that on a certificate of deposit. You might be getting 0.1 or 0.015 or infamous amount. This law has actually just changed. It used to be 3% of the tenant security deposit as interest. At least it's down to 1.5%, but I'll be just no way to sugarcoat it. It's a rip-off from your state legislature. At the end of the lease, that's when really all of this kicks into shape. That's when there'll be decisions. Will there be deductions from the security deposit? And if so, what are they going to be? And since this become a small claims matter, if it got into an argumentative state, you want to make sure you're doing it by the book. So if it ends up in court, you're on the high ground. You must give the tenant a written breakdown of any deductions for security deposits, copies of any invoices, and that must be provided to the tenant at their new address or their last known address within 45 days of the end of the lease. That is so important because if landlords just throw that by the wayside or don't care, they end up in court. The court says not only could the landlord be charged for the security deposit, but the court can award the tenant what they call triple damages, or 3 times the amount of the security deposit. So do the math real quick on that, and you'll find that you do not ever want to be in that situation. As I told you, this is a very in-depth subject. We've just touched on it. Hopefully it'll give you some food for thought. If you have some questions on it, please contact us here at Vantage Property Management.